Hello, 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 everyone. Do you guys hear me loud and clear? I don't want to sound too loud in your ear. Can you guys hear me? Microphone check 1, 2. Hello, everyone that is in the building. What's up, what's up, what's up? Hello, everyone. What's goody, y'all? Hello to all my new subscribers. Welcome. Thank you for coming, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Miss Whitney D, Miss Darcy, Miss Flawless, Amos. Hey, what's happening, y'all? Ty, wifey. What's up, wifey? Diva time. What's up, mommy? Tone the Goon. Hello. Thank you, Diva Time, for the super chat, mama. What's up, ladies? I'm going to let y'all get up in here. What's up, Wings? Hi, mama. What's up, what's up, what's up? Yes, yes. So, let's listen to a little bit about what happened today with the man of the hour. The man of the hour. The man with the superpowers, right? The man with the superpowers. The man with the bumps. The bumps. The man of the hour. Now, guys, I'm going to try my best not to curse. I'm going to try my best, y'all. Give me props if I do really well today. I'm going to try my best. Lord, please give me strength to get through this transcript without cursing. We got to be good now. We got to be good now. I'm monetized now. It's official. I need to watch my words. I need to slow it down. But let's listen to what happened today at R. Kelly's trial. And in this video, they're going to speak about one of the former assistants, which we know as Suzette Mayweather's. Matter of fact, I have a video in my my list there of videos, and in there's an interview that was done with Suzette Mayweather's, and I think you guys should check it out. Maybe if I get a chance, maybe I'll play it. All right? All righty, guys. Let's listen.
The racketeering trial of R&B star Robert Kelly continues in Brooklyn. On Monday, we heard the testimony of 2 new accusers, including a man who claimed the singer promised him a music career, but instead he was sexually abused for years. Today, we're hearing from former employees who described the inner workings of Kelly's home, the recording studios, and the constant stream of young girls the singer surrounded himself with. BNC correspondent Astrid Martinez is live outside the courthouse.
And the prosecution is showing R. Kelly as the head of a criminal enterprise that was led by some of his former associates, his assistants, and his entourage, which the prosecution says has enabled Kelly to continue this illegal activity for years. On the stand today, we heard from Suzette Mayweather. She was Kelly's assistant from 2015 until 2017. Now, during her employment, Mayweather said she met several of Kelly's girlfriends, including Jocelyn V, one known as as Jane by the courts, another being called number 76, Juice, Summer, and Dominique. Mayweather said she traveled with the girls many times on a tour bus. She saw them in Kelly's Chicago mansion or living in his Trump Tower apartment in Chicago. Mayweather testified she cared for the girls in the studio. She would take them to the mall or spa and speak to sales associates on their behalf because the girls were not allowed to interact with other men. Mayweather even mentioned an instance when she drove one of Kelly's girlfriends to her high school graduation rehearsal in Florida back in 2016. Now, also in 2016, Mayweather said she was present at an all-female birthday party at Kelly's studio. She said Kelly became upset with one of the girlfriends after she started twerking or dancing for another girl. Mayweather testified the singer made the women fight each other in a separate room. Mayweather also described in detail the control Kelly exerted over his girlfriends. She said Kelly made the girls call him daddy. When the girls were in elevators, they had to face the wall. And at Kelly's basketball games, they could only cheer for him. The girls were ordered to wear baggy clothes, and they were not allowed to leave certain rooms in Kelly's music studio or his house without the singer's permission, sometimes staying in a room for days or without eating. Mayweather also said she heard Kelly slap one of his girlfriends in a music studio. At one point, Mayweather even started crying, recalling an instance when Kelly was visibly upset with her and Dominique for not following his protocols. Mayweather said she had never seen Kelly so mad. She feared the look in his eyes, and she feared for Dominique. Now, the prosecution says the 54-year-old singer has abused 6 women and girls, including 4 who were underage at the time he started a sexual relationship with them. Kelly has denied all accusations of sexual assault and also has denied all accusations of misconduct. In Brooklyn, I'm Astrid Martinez for BNC.
Okay, guys. Can you guys hear me? Loud and clear, right? Everything's good. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Please make sure you hit the like buttons. All right. All right, so we're going to... No. Sorry, guys. All right. Now, we left it off on Whitney D's TV on page 1091. I'm going to go back a little bit just so I can, flow right into the next page. So let me do just that. Just go up to, okay. All right, so right now what's happening is Azriel is testifying on the stand, and she is being cross-examined by Mr. Canick, which is R. Kelly's lawyer. So he's part of the defense team, okay? And he starts off by asking a question to her. Isn't it a fact that they beat you in order to make you practice your music? Yes, Azriel said. Mr. Canick said, that beating started when you were in Baltimore. Am I correct? Ms. Giddy said, objection. The judge said, could I see counsel at the side, please, with the court reporter? They had a sidebar outside of the hearing. The judge says, I just want to clarify where we're going here. I think I know, but I ruled pre-trial that even if the parents had pushed her into a relationship with him, that is obviously not a defense. I mean, they are what they are, but I think that I'm right, that the focus on the parents right now is to support your theory that they and she conspired to get money out of him. Mr. Canick said, get money out of him? Yeah. Judge says, extort him? Mr. Canick said, yes. The judge said, I don't know. I'm sure you have a good faith basis for that. I'm not questioning that, but Mr. Canick said, basically, Your Honor, is that she had no interest in music at this time. None. The prosecutors opened up yesterday saying that she was only interested in pursuing her music and Mr. Kelly wanted sex. And then they redacted something. Then the judge said, but I precluded inquiry into that. Mr. Canick said, right. I'm not asking that. The judge said, right. Mr. Canick said, I'm trying to be very careful in asking it in such a way to show that basically her parents put great pressure on her and they were really invested in the music career and really interested to try to get her together with him. The judge said, I don't think there's anything wrong. I mean, first of all, the jurors are going to have a natural curiosity about where the parents were. But I am going to give them an instruction at the end that even if the parents didn't have a problem with this, that they can't consent for a 17-year-old. So, I mean, there is going to be some kind of an instruction about the limit to which they can consider the parents' involvement. Mr. Canick said, I understand that. The judge said, but I don't know. I'm guessing I want to give you some latitude here, and I am doing that. But I just want to make sure we are not crossing over into what I've precluded. So I think you need to get to the point where you say there is an extortion, which that's legitimate. Whether her parents were abusive to her, I don't think that's consistent. Just let me finish. Is consistent with that, and I'm not sure how relevant it is. Let me just hear from the prosecutor, and then I'll hear from you. Ms. Geddes, the prosecution, says, first of all, the witness has now established that she was, in fact, beaten by her parents. That's now out there. There is no basis to go further back into her childhood and make her relive any abuse that she suffered by her parents in front of everybody today. This is not a trial of the witness's parents, and that is what they're making this out to be. You can go forward with your extortion theory in a different way without, she lived in Baltimore years earlier. It's just not relevant when the abuse began or what, frankly, the nature of the abuse is. The judge says, I don't see that you're going into an exploration of her childhood, are you? Mr. Canick said, far from that. Ms. Geddes said, but when did she? The court said, But let me just finish. Miss Getty said, sorry. The judge said, calm down. If you have evidence that, and I am saying this because you have to say you have a good faith basis, that they wanted to get money out of him. That's certainly an appropriate area, but only to the extent that she's aware of it. And so if there is some evidence that she's aware of what her parents' motives are, that's fine. But I think there's been enough about whether her parents beat her. I mean, I thought she testified that she was in the choir and all these other things. Are you saying that that wasn't her own choice? Mr. Canick said, no. The judge said, she was in 2 choirs. Mr. Canick said, right. And the judge said, and what's the basis for that? Is that in the materials? I haven't read all the materials. The judge said, I ain't read all the materials. Ms. Getty said, what is in the materials is that her parents put pressure on her to succeed in the music world. There's nothing in there saying that she didn't want to do Patriot singers or the other activities that they did. But I still don't think we need to go any further into any physical abuse that the witness, that the Vic. Then the judge said, I mean, to the extent that it's relevant, I don't know. It seems marginally relevant at best to this extortion business, unless you are saying they forced her into it, which I don't take that to be your argument. Mr. Canick said, no. The judge said, I take it your argument is that they are basically stage parents that don't really care about their child's welfare and have turned sort of a blind eye to what's happened to her. But I don't know how helpful that is to your case. But that's not my point. And then Mr. Canick said, right. And then the judge said, but if you have evidence that there is a line of inquiry that she conspired with her parents to get money out of him, perfectly fine. Mr. Canick said, yes, we do. The judge said, let's go to that and stay away from. Mr. Canick said, okay. The judge said, her childhood, okay? Ms. Giddy said, so are we moving past any question? The judge said, why don't you let me stay in your lane? I'll take care of it. Mr. Canick said, absolutely, because I am not going to listen to you. Then there was a sidebar concluded. And now the jury's present, and the judge says, all right, let's move on. Mr. Canick said, thank you. Now the examination is continuing by Mr. Canick to Azriel. Mr. Canick says, now, you testified yesterday about some black panty that you got at the show. Am I correct? She said, yes. Mr. Canick said, and you testified and told us that Mr. Kelly gave it to you? And she said, yes, he did. Mr. Canick said, okay, this is when you were in the pit. Azriel said, yes. He questioned her and said, you weren't the only person that received the black panty that night. Am I correct? And she said, no, I was not. And Mr. Canick said, and in fact, the next day you went on social media about it. Am I correct? And she said, I did, yes. And Mr. Canick said, and what did you put on social media about it? She said, I believe I made a post pertaining to the black panties that he had given me. Mr. Canick said, what did you say about the black panty? She said, I don't remember verbatim. Mr. Canick said, I'm going to ask that I be allowed to approach Your Honor. The judge said, sure. Ms. Getty said, Your Honor, may I see it as well? And then Mr. Canick said, is that a public post that you referenced? Azriel said, yes. And then he said, you made that. She said, yes, I did. He said, and you made that? That's the post that you made pertaining to the black panty? And she said, yes. And he said, receiving the black panty? She said, yes. Like, why are we going over the same question of the panties? She got the panties. She got the panties already. Did you not understand her the first 8 times she told you? Then Mr. Canick says, Your Honor, I am going to offer that as a defense exhibit. The judge said, any objection? Ms. Getty said, none. The judge said, okay, that's in evidence. Mr. Canick said, I think this is N. Defense exhibit N was received in evidence. Mr. Canick said, and we are going to ask that it be published, Your Honor, to the jury. The exhibit is published to the jury only. Then the judge says, is this jury only? Mr. Canick said, yes, Your Honor. The judge said, okay. There was a pause. Mr. Canick said, thank you, Your Honor. Then he begins to question. Now, in April 2015, you were a member of the Patriot Singers, you said. She said, yes, I was. Mr. Canick said, and how long had you been with that group? And she said, I had been with that group the entire year. You had to audition. Mr. Canick said, okay, and you testified yesterday about losing a scholarship that you had received or scholarships you had received for college? Where were those scholarships? What schools? She said, no. I think you misunderstood me. By me getting homeschooled, I could no longer be eligible to get those scholarships. Mr. Canick said, so you were never offered a scholarship? She said, no, but we were studying to. Mr. Canick said, now, when you, in April of 2015, you were taking a break from music. Am I correct? She said, I don't recall. Mr. Canick said, you don't recall whether or not you were taking a break from music? Ms. Getty said, objection. The judge said, overruled. And then Azriel answers and says, I actually was, I don't think so. No, I had just actually shot a release single. Mr. Canick said, and what was the name of that single? Azriel said, it was called Liar, Liar. Mr. Canick said, and it was released at that time? And she said, no, it was unreleased. I believe we had just got back the finalized edits. Mr. Canick said, and when was it that you got back the finalized edit? And she said, I believe it was in April. Mr. Canick said, was it before the concert or after the concert? Azriel said, I believe it could have been before. Mr. Canick said, okay, well, when you met with the government, didn't you tell them that as of April 15th, around the time of this concert, that you had taken a break from music? Azriel said, as in break. Mr. Cannon said, don't look at them, please. She said, I'm not. Mr. Cannon said, answer my question. She said, no. So Mr. Cannon said, did you tell the government during your meetings with them that around April, the time of the concert, that you had taken a break from music? Azriel said, by break, I had been transitioning. Yes. And when you say transitioning, what do you mean? She said, meaning that prior to April, I had been doing shows, making income from doing cover songs, and I was transitioning into releasing my own music. So I was taking a break. Mr. Kanik said, so that's what you call taking a break? She said, yes. Mr. Kanik said, Your Honor, may we approach? The judge said, yes. With the court reporter? Mr. Kanik said, yes, Your Honor. Sidebar was held outside the hearing of the jury. And then the following sidebar took place outside the hearing of the jury. The judge said, so just before we begin, please don't give instructions to the witness. I'll take care of that if you need it. Mr. Kanik said, okay. The judge said, what is it you want? Mr. Kanik said, Your Honor, in her 302, she clearly stated that she was taking a break from music at around the time that she had met Mr. Kelly. The court said, right. Mr. Kanik said she was no longer interested in music because of the pressure that her parents had put upon her. And she's clearly lying about it now. And when I don't want, the judge said, you haven't shown her the statement. Mr. Kanik said, I am going to show it to her. The judge said, okay. Mr. Kanik said, I'm going to show it to her. The judge said, I thought you forgot. Mr. Kanik said, no, I just have someone who is retrieving it for me. But I think this is opening the door to get in the fact that why she's taking a break. I don't want to get into it, but she just has to own up to it. The judge said, first of all, you were kind of opening the door, not her. But I think it's okay to ask her if her parents were pressuring her. That's fine. Mr. Kanik said, okay. The judge said, we're just not going down the road into when you were 6. Mr. Kanik said, I don't want to do that. The judge said, and all those things. So it's fine. We're talking about the time around when it started. That's fine. Mr. Kanik said, okay. The judge said, and obviously, just general rule, we are not having. And I am not suggesting you would do this. But I did preclude inquiry into a number of areas, which I'm sure you remember. But anything around the area you can show her Mr. Kanik said, okay. The judge said, I don't need to tell you how to do that. Sorry. And then the sidebar concluded. Then in open court with the jury present, the judge says, "Whenever you're ready, Mr. Canick." Mr. Canick said, "Okay, thank you." Then his examination continues, and he asks, "Now, your parents proposed a number of business deals with Mr. Kelly. Am I correct?" Azriel said, "Yes, they did." Mr. Canick said, "And one of the business deals that they proposed to Mr. Kelly was to endorse a Bluetooth dildo. Am I correct?" She said, "That is correct. Yes." And Mr. Canick said, "And in fact, they made a number of efforts to try to get him to do this. Am I correct?" She said, "Yes." Mr. Canick said, "And the feature of this dildo was in use. It would sing Mr. Kelly's music, correct?" She said, "Correct, yes." Mr. Canick said, "And it was your mother who was pretty much promoting this. Am I correct?" Azriel said, "I don't remember which one of them it was." Mr. Canick said, "And Mr. Kelly refused. Am I correct?" And Azriel said, "No, he actually told them to give him a proper proposal." And Mr. Canick said, "Did they give him a proper proposal?" She said, "I don't know." And then he said, "At your graduation, didn't your mother approach Mr. Kelly again about endorsing this Bluetooth dildo, and he refused?" She said, "No. At graduation, that's when he told them to send him a proper proposal." Mr. Canick said, "And it's your testimony here today under oath that he never rejected this proposal?" Ms. Getty says, "Objection." The judge said, "Overruled. Do you recall whether he rejected the proposal?" Azriel said, "In their face, no." Mr. Canick said, "Do you recall him ever rejecting the proposal?" She said, "He did confide in me later. Yes." Mr. Canick said, "What was that?" She said, "He just said that it was not something that he could ever do." Mr. Canick said, "Not something he could ever do, right?" She said, "Correct." Ms. Getty said, "Objection." The judge said, "Overruled. That's what he said?" And she said, "Uh-huh." The judge said, "All right, next question." Mr. Canick said, "They also tried to get him to fund a food truck. Am I correct?" And Azriel said, "I believe so, yes." Mr. Canick said, "And he declined that one as well. Am I correct?" She said, "Yes." And Mr. Canick said, "And your father tried to get him to let him operate Mr. Kelly's lighting show for his concerts. Am I correct?" She said, "Yes, he did." Mr. Canick said, "And Mr. Kelly declined that. Am I correct?" She said, "Yes, he did." Mr. Canick said, "Then your mother tried to get a job working for Mr. Kelly. Am I correct?" She said, "I actually told her to do that." Mr. Canick said, "Okay, but the answer to my question would be yes." And she said, I asked her to do that. Yes. Mr. Canick said, no, I didn't ask. The judge said, let me. Just do your best just to answer the question that Mr. Canick is asking you. She said, okay. The judge said, okay. The witness said, okay. The judge said, put the question again, Mr. Canick, please. And Azriel said, yes. The judge said, oh, the answer is yes, okay? Ms. Getty said, I think she was, and then Azriel said, I was asking to repeat. Ms. Getty said, asking him to repeat the question. Mr. Canick said, could you read it back for me? The judge said, yes, and I would just appreciate if everyone would let me do my part of the job. I think I got it, okay? All right. If you can read it back, that would be fine. Then the question was read. Azriel said, I would have to say that wasn't true. And then Mr. Canick said, well, your mother didn't try to get a job with Mr. Kelly as an assistant. She said, I told her to do that. And then Mr. Canick said, your mother didn't try to get a job with Mr. Kelly as an assistant? Oh my God, is Mr. Canick deaf, hard of hearing, dumb, or slow? I'm confused. Then Azriel said, herself? No. I told her to do that. The judge said, but then did she do it? And then Azriel said, yes, she did. The judge said, okay. Mr. Canick said, your mother didn't try to get a job with Mr. Kelly as his driver? Azriel said, yes, she did. Mr. Canick said, did she get the job? Azriel said, no, she did not. Mr. Canick said, now, at some point, your mother told you to take pictures and information regarding Mr. Kelly so it could be used. Those items could be used for potential blackmail. Am I correct? She said, no. Mr. Canick said, I'm not correct. And she said, that is not true. Mr. Canick said, and that is your testimony under oath here. She said, yes. There was a pause. The judge said, just tell the government what you're referring to, if you don't mind. Mr. Canick said, to page 2. Ms. Getty said, thank you. Then Mr. Canick asked her, now, isn't it a fact that you told the government in a meeting on January 9th, 2020, that before you met Mr. Kelly, you were taking a break from music and enjoying life? She said, yes, I was transitioning. Yes. Mr. Canick said, Now, you testified and told us yesterday that there was a meeting that you had with Mr. Kelly at the Dolphin Hotel. She said, yes. Mr. Koenig said, and you testified and told us the manner that you were dressed when you went to that meeting. Am I correct? She said, pardon me? He said, you testified and told us yesterday about the attire that you wore at that meeting. Am I correct? She said, yes. And Mr. Koenig said, and there was a photograph of you in evidence that you identified as the outfit that you wore on that day. Am I correct? She said, yes. He said, now, when you met with the agent in this interview that you had with them, you told them that you were dressed in baggy clothes. Am I correct? The judge said, what kind of clothes? Mr. Koenig said, baggy. The judge said, okay. And then Azriel said, to meet him? Mr. Koenig said, isn't it a fact that when you met with the agents, when I say the agents, the government? She said, okay. Mr. Koenig said, isn't it a fact that you told them that when you met with Mr. Kelly on the date that you went to the Dolphin Hotel, that you were dressed in sweat clothes? She said, no. Mr. Koenig said, and you're as absolute about that as anything else you've testified to? She said, yes. Ms. Getty said, objection. The judge said, overruled. Mr. Koenig said, now, and isn't it a fact that you told the government in your meeting with them that you had just gotten out of a weightlifting class and you were sweating? She said, no, I told that to the defendant. He said, okay. Now, when you had the meeting with the government, you were advised by the agents that they were government officials. Am I correct? She said, yes, I was. And Mr. Koenig said, and they advised you that making a false statement to a government official is a crime. Am I correct? She said, yes, they did. And Mr. Koenig said, and they told you the consequences of making that statement, making a false. Said, no. Then he said, but you know what a crime is, correct? She said, I do, yes. Mr. Koenig said, too many pieces of paper, Your Honor. May I have a moment to retrieve it? The judge said, yes. And then there was a pause. Mr. Koenig said, now, I asked you earlier about your mother seeking employment with Mr. Kelly. And you told me that that was your suggestion. Do you remember telling me that? She said, yes, it was. Mr. Koenig said, now, when you met with the government, did you tell them that your mother suggested that she could be employed by Mr. Kelly? She said, I don't remember. Then Mr. Koenig said, I'm going to show you this document and see if it refreshes your recollection. Mr. Canick said, "May I approach you, Your Honor?" The judge said, "Yes." Mr. Canick said, "Just direct your attention to the upper portion." Azriel said, "Okay, which part?" He said, "Let me have that." She said, "Sorry, the front or the back?" And he said, "This top paragraph." She said, "Yes." He said, "Have you read the document?" She said, "Yes, I did. Yes." He said, Did it refresh your recollection that it was your mother who suggested that she get a job with Mr. Kelly?" Azriel said, "They could have did that inaccurately." She said, Mr. Koenig said, "I didn't ask you that, whether or not what they could have done." She said, "Yeah." Mr. Koenig said, "What I'm asking you is, did the document refresh your recollection that it was your mother who asked, who suggested she get a job?" She said, "No, I still did suggest those jobs to my mother." Mr. Koenig said, "So after having read that," she said, "Yes." Mr. Koenig said, "It does not refresh your recollection?" She said, "No." Mr. Koenig said, "But you read the document and you saw it there. Am I correct?" She said, "Yes." Uh-huh. Then there was a pause. I don't understand what he's trying to prove here, because what is Mr. Koenig goes on to say, "Your Honor, I am going to move to another area." Yeah, please do. Please do, Mr. Koenig. Move on to another area, please. Because we're getting bored with this one, okay? It's redundant. And she's still saying the same thing. She told her mother to try to get a job with R. Kelly. The judge said, "Okay." Mr. Koenig said, "I'm done with the 302s. Then Mr. Koenig said, "Now, you testified there came a point in time that you're at the Dolphin Hotel, and that according to you," oops, I went too far. "And that according to you, my client, Mr. Kelly, asked you to perform certain sexual function behavior on you." She said, "Yes, he did." Mr. Koenig said, "Okay, and you testified that there came a point in time that he actually did, and then police came. Am I correct?" She said, "Yes, that is true." And then he said, "And when the police came, you were still in the room. Am I correct?" She said, "I was in the restroom." Mr. Koenig said, "But when the police were there, you were in the room. Am I correct?" She said, "Yes, I was." Mr. Koenig said, "And when the police came, you were still in the room. Am I correct?" She said, "I was in the restroom." He said, "But when the police were there, you were in the room. Am I correct?" She said, "Yes, I was." Mr. Koenig said, "And you spoke to them, correct?" She said, "Yes, I did." Mr. Koenig said, "They asked your age." She said, yes, they did. She said, they did. Yes. Mr. Canick said, you told them 18. She said, I did. Yes. And Mr. Canick said, they asked you for identification. She said, I did. Yes. Then he said, you gave them identification. Am I correct? She said, yes, I did. Mr. Canick said, they studied the identification. She said, uh-huh. He said, is that a yes? She said, yes. Sorry. Yes. Mr. Canick said, and after they finished studying the identification, they had you call your parents. Am I correct? She said, yes, I did. Mr. Canick said, and you put the phone on speaker? She said, yes, I did. He said, and you spoke to your parents. Am I correct? She said, I did. Yes. And then he said, now, and your parents spoke to you in the presence of the officers? She said, yes. He said, and they never asked you to come downstairs? Am I correct? She said, no, they did not. He said, you didn't tell Mr. Kelly that. Well, you know what? Enough of this. I am going with the officers. She said, no, I did not. Mr. Canick said, you didn't tell the officers that Mr. Kelly violated you. Am I correct? She said, I had not. No. Mr. Canick said, in fact, according to you, you stated in the room, in fact, according to you, you stayed in the room and continued the sexual encounter with Mr. Kelly. Am I correct? And she said, I did. Yes. Mr. Canick said, and according to you, you stayed in the room and continued the sexual encounter after the officers had left. Am I correct? She said, yes, I did. Mr. Canick said, and then, according to you, you didn't want this to happen. Am I correct? She said, I did not want this to happen. No. Mr. Canick said, and you felt violated. Am I correct? I did. Yes. Mr. Canick said, in fact, you were outraged. Am I correct? She said, yes, I was. Mr. Canick said, but according to you, he came back into town and you got back with him within a couple of days. Am I correct? And she said, no, he had flown me out to the city he was in. Mr. Canick said, well, isn't it your testimony that he stayed in town? And while he was in town, you and he got back together sexually? She said, no, I think you misunderstood me. Mr. Canick said, don't tell me what I'm misunderstanding. Ms. Getty said, objection. Mr. Canick said, okay, it's either yes or no, Your Honor. The judge said, I haven't said a word. Mr. Canick said, okay, I'm sorry. Mr. Canick said, didn't you testify yesterday that he was in Orlando for a few other days and you and he got back together a couple of more times? She said, no, that's not what I said yesterday. He said, okay. And so after you felt so violated and outraged, you flew out to meet him. She said, under the impression he would teach me techniques. Mr. Canick said, no. The judge said, just answer the question. As we all said, okay. The judge said, you don't have to explain. If there's something that needs explaining, the government can ask you on redirect. As we all said, okay. The judge said, so what is the answer to Mr. Canick's question? She said, okay, can you re-ask it? Mr. Canick said, after being violated, outraged, and devastated, you flew out to meet him. Am I correct? She said, I did. Yes. He said, and how shortly after was it you were violated, outraged, and devastated that you went out to meet him? She said, how soon? He said, yes. She said, probably, most likely the next weekend. He said, did your parents go with you? She said, they did not. He said, do you have an older brother? She said, I do, yes. He said, did he go out with you? She said, he did not. Mr. Canick said, did a chaperone go out with you? She said, no, I had no chaperone. Mr. Canick said, do you have an older sister? She said, I do, yes. Mr. Canick said, did the older sister go out with you? She said, she did not. No. Mr. Canick said, you went out by yourself. Am I correct? She said, I did, yes. He said, did you tell your parents about the violation that Mr. Kelly supposedly committed upon you before going out to meet up with him? Ms. Getty said, objection. The judge said, overruled. She said, absolutely not. He said, did you tell anybody? She said, no one. Mr. Canick said, now, when you went out the first time, where did you go? She said, I believe we were on the West Coast in LA. Mr. Canick said, and you took time off from school? She said, I tried to go on the weekend. Mr. Canick said, my question is, did you take time away from school on this trip? She said, I believe it was the weekend. Mr. Canick said, didn't you testify yesterday that the trip occurred on the 21st of, well, you tell me what was the date of the trip. She said, I don't actually remember the date for a meeting. I would need the evidence. Mr. Canick said, and where were you on that trip? She said, California. He said, and you testified and told us yesterday that you were flown out there by Mr. Kelly? She said, his assistant. Mr. Koenig said, yes or no, ma'am. She said, yes. Mr. Koenig said, okay. And you were shown a ticket yesterday for the trip. She said, yes. He said, where specifically did you fly? She said, to California. He said, does April 28th sound familiar of 2015? She said, that does sound familiar. Yes. He said, do you remember what day of the week April 15th was in 2015? Ms. Getty said, objection. He said, April 28th was in 2015. The judge said, you're not objecting to that, are you? Ms. Getty said, no. The judge said, okay. Azriel said, I don't know. Mr. Koenig said, Your Honor, may I approach? The judge said, yes. All right, guys, let's see. Give me a second. Okay. Okay. Now the judge said, yes. Mr. Koenig said, I'll ask you to look at this and see if it refreshes your recollection. That's a calendar, right? She said, yes. Mr. Koenig said, the calendar is for April 2015. Am I correct? She said, yes. Mr. Koenig said, what date is April 28th? She said, it is on a Tuesday. Mr. Koenig said, that was a school day, was it not? She said, yes, it was. He said, did you have school the following day? She said, I did, yes. And Mr. Koenig said, did you have school the following day? She said, I did, yes. Mr. Koenig said, so the answer to my question earlier about whether or not you took time away from school to go, the answer would be yes. Am I correct? She said, yes, that is true. Mr. Koenig said, and you went with your parents' permission? Am I correct? She said, yes, I did. Mr. Koenig said, how long did you stay out on that trip? She said, I don't remember, but it was definitely days. Mr. Koenig said, didn't you testify yesterday that you got stuck out there? She said, yes. Mr. Koenig said, and when you say stuck, what do you mean? She said, meaning that, like, if it was in the middle of a school week, I wouldn't be returning until Sunday or Monday. He said, well, didn't you go to another concert on May 1st? She said, yes, I did. He said, where was that concert? She said, I don't recall. He said, and that concert was on the West Coast, was it not? She said, I don't recall. I'm sorry. Then Mr. Koenig says, does Stockton, California sound correct? She said, yes, that does. Mr. Koenig said, and you didn't fly home in between going to the West Coast on the 28th of April and May 1st, did you? She said, I don't know. Mr. Koenig said, May 1st was a weekend. Am I correct? She said, I don't. He said, let me show you this and see if it refreshes your recollection. She said, thank you. Yes, May 1st is a Friday. He said, so you didn't fly back home after flying out on April 28th? Am I correct? She said, no. Mr. Koenig said, I'm not correct. She said, oh, no, you are correct. Sorry. Mr. Koenig said, and you said you went to Stockton, California. She said, yes. He said, and that was for a show. Am I correct? She said, yes. Mr. Koenig said, and you stayed at that show. What was the next show that you then went to? She said, after California, I believe it was Las Vegas. He said, and you didn't go back to the East Coast? Back to Orlando? Am I correct? She said, I don't know. He said, you don't know whether or not you went back to your home between then? What was the show? The date of the show in Las Vegas? She said, I don't recall that's what I'm saying. I don't recall the date of the show in Las Vegas. All right, guys, I'm going to leave it here. I love y'all. Thank you so much for coming. We are leaving it on 11/22. Okay. And I gather our brother Atmos or Whitney D TV will be continuing. I don't know who's going to go up first tomorrow morning. I gather it'll be Atmos. He'll probably do it in the morning. That would be cool. And then Whitney will go in the afternoon, and then I'll go in the evening hour, and we'll finish up this document, however it goes. And hopefully we'll be able to get day 6 tomorrow, as well as 7, 8, and 9, and so forth and so forth. So thank you so much, guys, for coming. I appreciate you guys. If you like my commentary, you can hit the super chat. You can hit my direct line, which is Cash App, DivaDivineLight. And if you want to donate to the transcript fund that we are building throughout the next couple of weeks to help us to get these transcripts, please do so. You can Cash App me at DivaDivineLight. You can also Cash App at Miss Love Zone at thisblessedhouse. And you can Cash App our brother from Facebook, Robert Keller, 83. And you can also Cash App Whitney D TV, which is Whitney D 2014. That's her Cash App. So we're all collecting, you guys, and we're putting all our money together. And on my side, for those who have donated to the transcripts, make sure you email me and I will send you a copy, okay? Only to those who donated to my Cash App, okay? And my email is diva.josh.32332@gmail.com. All right. And I'll know, of course, who Cash Apps me. And when you put in the subject of the Cash App for transcript. And if it's for me, say that it's for me, so I don't mix up the money. Okay, guys? All right. So this was a lot. This was a lot to inhale here. Oh, boy. So, So now they're showing that Azriel was being transported. So now comes in the transportation, which she's part of, the Mann Act, the coercion, and all that other stuff. So guys, I'm going to say goodnight. Please make sure You don't forget, you hit that like button on your way out, please. Please make sure you hit that like button, guys. Remember, I left it on 1122, y'all. 1122. Put that in the chat, guys. We stopped at 1122. You know, so yeah. And you know, these lawyers, for me, they're not proving a god darn thing. They're not proving anything. For me, I just see a lot of redundant questions. They're just helping the prosecutors prove their case. That's how I see it. That's how I see it. And Joy, Joycelyn Savage, if by any chance you run across me, please go home. Even if you don't go home, leave. Just leave. That's my point. Mommy, leave. You don't have to go home. Just leave. Stop supporting this man. He's been hurting you for so long. I know it's hard to get over someone you love, you know, and that whole love bombing, trauma bonding is very hard to get over. But you will get over it. You will. I promise you, you will. You will never forget, but you will get over it. All of you ladies who are fighting in this battle right now, you will all get over it. Eventually, just stand strong, stand in your truth, and don't be afraid. You should not be afraid anymore. No more. R. Kelly is where he needs to be, and he will never leave where he is. He will remain there for the rest of his life, allegedly. So that's it. That's all. Thank you guys for stopping by. I appreciate y'all. Thank you so much. I am tired. I'm not even going to lie to you guys. I am so done. Hold on a second. Thank you guys for flooding the chat for the ladies. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Purple and yellow hearts for our girls. Purple for the survivors and yellow for Joy to go home. Go home. Please. 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 Go home. Ladies, go home. You know, enough is enough. This man has done enough to you ladies. And it's time that you guys go home. You know, go home. You need to go home, baby. She does. You know, it's just so sad that everybody is going through something that's in this. You know, this man has hurt a lot of people's lives. He really has. And people still stayed because they cared about him. They loved him. And it was hard to let go. That's crazy. Wow. Wow. Peace be with everyone. Peace. Peace be with everyone. Prayers up for everybody. Love you guys. Peace.